The moment I understood that my life was no longer fully mine, I was sitting in a hospital waiting room, staring at a bill I knew I could never pay. The paper was thin, but it felt heavy in my hands. Numbers sat on the page like they had already decided something about me. I remember thinking that if I stood up and walked out, nothing would stop me, except the truth that walking out would change everything in a way I could not undo. That was when a stranger I had never seen before walked past me, paused, looked back, and quietly paid for my life without asking a single question. Before that day, my life followed a narrow, careful path. I worked a modest job that paid just enough to keep things stable. I lived alone in a small apartment where nothing was broken, but nothing felt personal either. I avoided debt, avoided conflict, avoided relying on anyone. I believed independence was the same as strength. I trusted myself more than I trusted people, and I told myself that was wisdom earned through experience. I had learned early that asking for help creates obligations, and obligations create risk. So I survived by keeping control over every part of my life that I could manage. That belief was tested when my health began to fail quietly. It didn't arrive as a crisis. It started as exhaustion, then pain I explained away, then days when standing up felt like effort. I ignored it longer than I should have because ignoring problems had always worked before. When I finally went to the hospital, the diagnosis came calmly, almost politely, as if it were trying not to upset me. Treatment was possible. Recovery was likely. The cause was not. As the doctor spoke, I nodded and asked practical questions, already calculating what I could afford and what I could not. The truth settled in slowly. Survival would require more than control this time. The waiting room was quiet. People sat with phones in their hands, pretending not to listen to their own thoughts. I held the bill and felt something unfamiliar: helplessness. Not fear, not panic, but the clear understanding that my usual rules no longer applied. I could not solve this alone. That realization damaged something deep inside my identity. I had always believed that if I worked hard and stayed careful, life would meet me halfway. Now life was asking something I had never learned how to give. When the stranger stopped near me, I barely noticed at first. He was older, dressed simply, moving without urgency. He looked at the bill in my hands, then at my face. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask who I was. He said one sentence, spoken quietly but firmly: "This shouldn't end you." Then he walked to the counter and paid. By the time I stood up, my voice caught somewhere in my chest. I tried to thank him, to ask why, to return control to myself by understanding the situation. He only said, "Don't turn this into a debt," and left. That moment took something from me and gave me something I didn't know how to carry. Relief came first, sharp and overwhelming. Then confusion. Then shame. I had built my entire sense of worth around not needing anyone, and a stranger had stepped into my life and rewritten that story without permission. I felt exposed, not because he had helped me, but because I didn't know how to respond in a way that protected my identity. Accepting help felt like losing ground I had spent years defending. After the treatment, recovery was slow. Physically, things improved. Mentally, I struggled. The stranger's act stayed with me. It followed me home, sat with me during quiet meals, and returned every time I tried to explain the situation to myself in a way that made sense. I told myself it was random kindness. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But the truth was harder. Someone had trusted me with generosity without demanding anything in return, and I did not know how to live with that kind of freedom. I tried to find him. Not because I wanted to repay the money, but because I wanted control back. I asked hospital staff. I checked records. No one could tell me much. He had paid and left. The absence of answers made the situation feel larger, as if the act itself mattered more than the person who did it. That frightened me more than the illness ever had. I had always believed every action had a clear motive. This one refused to fit into that belief. As weeks passed, the consequences of that moment began to surface. Friends I had kept at a distance reached out when they heard what happened. I found myself hesitating before pushing them away. For the first time, self-preservation and honesty were in direct conflict. Protecting myself meant returning to isolation. Trusting others meant risking disappointment, dependence, and loss of control. I could feel the old habits pulling me back, telling me to close off again, to reduce the story to something manageable. But the stranger's words stayed with me. This shouldn't end you. The midpoint came quietly one evening when I realized I was angry, not at the stranger, but at myself. Angry that I had built a life where one unexpected problem could destroy everything. Angry that I had confused control with safety for so long. Angry that accepting help felt like weakness because I had never allowed myself another definition of strength. That realization reframed the stranger's act completely. He hadn't saved me by paying the bill. He had exposed a lie I was living. From that point on, I made deliberate changes. Small ones at first. I told people the truth when they asked how I was doing. I admitted uncertainty without rushing to fix it. I accepted help without explaining myself. Each choice felt risky. Each one threatened the structure I had relied on for years. But with every step, I felt something loosening inside me. Freedom didn't arrive as confidence. It arrived as honesty. The climax came when I finally tracked the stranger down through indirect means. I found him sitting in a public park, reading quietly. My heart raced as I approached, not because I feared him, but because I feared what the conversation might demand of me. I thanked him, finally. I told him what his action had done to me. He listened without interrupting. When I asked why he helped me, he answered simply, "Someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it. I spent years trying to pay it back instead of living better." Don't make that mistake. There was no dramatic resolution. No moment of closure that tied everything neatly together. He stood up, nodded once, and walked away. The uncertainty remained, but it felt different now. It was no longer something I needed to eliminate. It was something I could live with. In the months that followed, my life did not become easier in obvious ways. I still worked. I still worried. Some things were lost forever, including the illusion that control alone could keep me safe. What I gained was quieter and more lasting. I gained the ability to trust without keeping score. I gained the freedom to accept help without losing myself. I gained a clearer sense of who I was when survival was no longer my only goal. I understand now that the stranger didn't pay for my life with money. He paid for it by forcing me to confront a truth I had avoided, that protecting yourself too well can cost you your humanity. Control can keep you alive, but trust is what allows you to live. Here is the truth I carry with me now, in words that still feel personal every time I think them. Help given without conditions doesn't create debt. It reveals the life you are afraid to live. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If it made you reflect on the ways you protect yourself, or the help you refused when you needed it most, you're not alone. Feel free to share this story with someone who might need it. And if you want more honest stories that help you think, feel, and grow while improving your English, you're always welcome here. Subscribe gently, stay curious, and walk with us into the next story when you're ready.